be in the back seat over here.
Hold on, man.
Yes.
Get this seat up.
Okay, just take a seat in there for me, Lucy.
This is the moment that NHS nurse Lucy Letby was arrested on suspicion of the murder of newborn babies at the Countess of Chester Hospital, as well as the attempted murder of several others. This is a case that shocked the nation and led to the conviction of the worst child serial killer in modern times in the UK. This is the story of how circumstantial evidence, carefully pieced together by the police and tied together by the prosecution, caught a serial baby killer. "33-year-old Lucy Letby began working as a registered nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2012 within the neonatal unit. She qualified to work with infants within the intensive care unit in 2015. This is when a number of suspicious deaths began to occur. In terms of a timeline, in June of 2015, an informal review revealed that there were 4 unexplained collapses within the same unit, 3 of which resulted in the death of newborn babies. Lucy Letby was recorded as being on shift on each of those occasions. In October of 2015, following another 4 unexplained deaths, another review, this time conducted by a ward manager, noted that Lucy Letby was the only staff member consistently present during those deaths. No action was taken by trust executives at the time. In February of 2016, a third review was conducted investigating 5 unexplained deaths within the unit. Again, the common factor was the presence of Lucy Letby on shift during the times when these deaths occurred. When these findings were forwarded to the executive team, they deemed that these findings to be coincidental with no substantial action taken. In June 2016, following yet more deaths, the lead neonatologist demanded that Letby be removed from the unit, but this request was rejected, with the duty executive stating that Letby was safe to work and that she would take responsibility in anything that happened to any more babies under Letby's care. The trust executive directors went on to say that the involvement of Letby was circumstantial and based on a misguided witch hunt by certain doctors. And finally, in May of 2017, the Trust finally announced that they were involving the police to investigate suspicious deaths at the Countess of Chester Hospital, and a police investigation was launched named Operation Hummingbird. On the 3rd of July 2018, Lucy Letby was arrested on suspicion of 8 counts of murder and a further 6 counts of attempted murder following a year-long investigation by the police. She was bailed and re-arrested twice more as the police needed further time to consider the evidence before coming to definitive charging decisions in this case. On the 11th of November 2020, Lucy Letby was charged with 8 counts of murder and a further 10 counts of attempted murder and was remanded into custody. Much of the evidence used to prosecute Lucy Letby came in the form of circumstantial evidence rather than direct evidence of her committing the acts of murder or attempted murder. In law, circumstantial evidence is evidence which is not drawn from a direct observation of a fact in issue in the case. Now, what does that mean in practice? Well, if I as a witness observe another individual shooting dead someone with a pistol, then I have directly observed the act of murder. The only question for me is whether or not I am telling the truth. If, however, I hear a gunshot go off, I round a corner, and then I see an individual standing over a corpse with a smoking pistol, well, that's not direct evidence. That evidence is circumstantial. There could be an innocent explanation for the individual holding a pistol, such as the real killer having fled moments earlier and then the bystander picking up the pistol. There are several instances of circumstantial evidence in this case, most notably the fact that at the time of the murders and the attempted murders, Lucy Letby was the only person to have been on shift on all of those occasions. Now, that's perhaps not conclusive in of itself, but it is too often to be written off as a complete coincidence. When coupled together with evidence such as child C, who Letby was observed standing over his monitor when his alarm sounded, and then child C later dying of air being injected into his lungs, or the case of child E that Letby was observed giving milk to, and then child E's mother observing the child to be distressed and bleeding from the mouth, with Letby standing nearby and not appearing to do anything. All the handwritten notes found at Letby's address, including "I am evil, I did this," and an accompanying diary with the initials and exact dates of the babies that die. You can see how circumstantial evidence, when pieced together, can form very powerful evidence in this case. On the 10th of October 2022, the trial of Lucy Letby began at Manchester Crown Court. This case was unusual by the fact that the victims in the case were identified as child A to child Q, and 9 of Letby's colleagues who gave evidence in this case were given anonymity orders, preventing their identities from being reported in the press. Normally, witnesses who give evidence at trial are able to have their names freely reported in the press. The prosecution's case was that Letby used a variety of methods to murder or attempt to murder the newborn babies under her care. This included injecting air or insulin into the baby's bloodstream, or force-feeding an overdose of milk or other fluids. Letby's intention, they stated, was to deceive her colleagues into believing that the babies all died from natural causes. The key evidence that the prosecution put forward were fourfold. Firstly, there was the medical records which were used to establish the condition of the babies when they were attacked, and showed things such as the falsification of notes made by Letby. There was then the text messages and social media activity of Letby, including the curiosity and fascination that she had with the parents of the babies for which she had harmed. There were the staff rotas, which we've talked about previously, which showed that Letby was the one constant with regards to the deaths and collapses on the unit. And finally, there were the handwritten notes and diaries, such as the words "I am evil, I did this," and the initials and dates of all of the babies that had died under Letby's care. You will notice that all of these key pieces of evidence are circumstantial evidence rather than direct evidence of the crimes being committed. You can see how any of them in isolation may be insufficient to prove Letby's guilt, but when they are considered together as part of the case as a whole, how this circumstantial evidence can become extremely compelling. The defence case, as you might expect, focused on the lack of direct evidence against Lucy Letby in committing the murders or attempted murders. They painted Lucy Letby as a dedicated nurse who was being blamed for a series of unfortunate coincidences and was being made a scapegoat. Lucy Letby herself gave evidence in her trial, and in one example, when she was asked about the handwritten notes, stated that she did blame herself for the deaths of those babies, but on the basis that she felt she could have done something more to save them, rather than her making any sort of admission that she had committed any acts of harm against any of those babies. The jury retired to consider their verdict on the 10th of June 2023. The verdicts were returned over the course of 10 days, given the number of charges that Lucy Letby was facing. Following the delivery of the final verdict on the 18th of August 2023, the decisions were made public. Lucy Letby was found guilty of 7 counts of murder against newborn babies and a further 6 counts of attempted murder. She was found not guilty of the attempted murder of 2 babies, and on the other 6 charges the juries failed to reach a verdict. The case was then adjourned for sentencing on the 21st of August 2023. Due to the convictions for murder and attempted murder, the judge was required to pass a mandatory life sentence on each of those charges. Furthermore, in accordance with the sentencing guidelines, for murders of this kind, it was a certainty that Lucy Letby would receive a whole life order. Normally, when an individual receives a life sentence, they will be given a minimum term which they must serve before being considered eligible to be considered for release by the parole board. When an individual is given a whole life order, it means that they will never be considered eligible to be considered for release by the parole board. When it came to the sentencing remarks of the judge, he stated that this was a cruel, calculated and cynical campaign of child murder involving the smallest and most vulnerable of children. There was a deep malevolence bordering on sadism in your actions, and during the course of this trial you have coldly denied any responsibility for your wrongdoing and sought to attribute some fault to others. In their totality, the offences of murder and attempted murder were of exceptionally high, serious and just punishment according to law, requires a whole life order. Lucy Letby refused to attend her sentencing hearing, so she did not hear the sentencing remarks of the judge, nor the victim impact statements read out by the families of the victims. Her refusal to attend led to the government announcing new measures to require defendants to attend court for their sentencing hearing, including by force if required. Now, some of these new measures are not well thought out, in my opinion. The government also announced that it was launching an independent inquiry into the murders and the circumstances regarding these murders. Lucy Letby is now serving her sentence at HMP Low Newton in County Durham and continues to protest her innocence, including launching an appeal against her conviction. I have two final thoughts on this case. Firstly, this is a case that shows when circumstantial evidence is carefully pieced together by the police and the prosecution, it can demonstrate beyond reasonable doubt that someone is guilty of a crime, as is the case in this case. And my second point is it's really important not to second guess the jury's verdict based on the views of people such as myself who were not in attendance at the entire trial. The jury sat through a long 9-month trial listening carefully to the evidence and have come to a decision on the guilt of Lucy Letby, including, let's not forget, 2 counts on which they returned verdicts of not guilty. So whilst people can have their opinion on the case, it's important not to second guess the decisions made by the jury. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video informative. If you do have any comments, please post them down below. And if you did enjoy this video, please do consider giving it a like. And if you'd like to see more from me, please do subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Take care.